Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro, friends. Today's episode of the podcast is dedicated to the bushfire relief fund that's happening for the bushfires across Australia. Please see the show notes below for any details of ways that you can contribute to the bushfire fund and to the animal wildlife relief funds. Today on the Daily Coffee Pro, we're talking about knowing your workplace culture. And this is really important for any of you who own businesses, as well as anyone who is an employee within our industry. The reason I want to talk about this stems from some recent consulting work that I did with a company that's looking at being very intentional about creating a workplace culture that works for them and their employees equally for everybody. So it's not skewed one way to benefit just employees, not skewed one way to benefit just the employers, but something that works for everybody. And it was really great to be contacted by a client that said, listen, I don't know how to do this. What are we doing wrong? What seems to not be working? And why aren't we able to find the traction that we're finding? So today we're going to be talking about that, knowing your workplace culture. And then tomorrow on the podcast, we're going to be talking about how to change, how to approach changing, the things that need to change in order to achieve the kind of culture that you want. So knowing your culture, first of all, why is it important? The reason knowing your culture, your workplace culture is important, whether you're an employer or an employee, it's because first of all, you want to see if it's the right place for you to exist. If you're an employee, this is important because you don't want to be walking into an environment that is uncomfortable for you. So for example, if you're a very timid person and you're working for an employer who is focused on high-fiving every customer that comes in and getting really excited and being very vibrant and, wearing the latest, coolest clothes, and you're a really introverted introvert, perhaps that's not the right workplace culture for you. As an employer, why it's really important to know what your workplace culture is because if you are unaligned with the culture of the people that are working for you, you have lost complete control of any way of making sure that everything that needs to get done gets done. You've lost control of whether it's a safe environment or not. You've lost control of the branding and how it's getting messaged out there. You've lost control of being able to solve any problems. The boundaries are flung wide open and you have lost control. That's an example of passive leadership. So if you don't know what your workplace culture is, it's super concerning for you as an owner, and you may be unaware of the fact that you're going to end up in a really concerning situation. And it's concerning for your employees if you're not across what kind of a workplace culture that you have. So they're the reasons that it's important to know what your workplace culture is. Now, how do you go about figuring out what your workplace culture is? And this is where communication is a really, really important skill to have, whether you're an employer, a manager, or an employee. And at the key of all of it is asking questions. So recently in working with these clients, I needed to get an understanding before we could figure out how to change the workplace culture of understanding what the workplace culture was. Now, bear in mind, what you as an owner think the workplace culture is may be very different than what the way that employees see the workplace culture. And so what's very important is for you to go out there and very simply ask employees, have somebody ask. If you don't feel your employees trust you enough to be honest with you, find somebody that the employees do trust and ask them to get some feedback on what are the words or phrases that employees would use to figure out what the workplace culture is, or how they would describe what the workplace culture is. I would say that if you haven't put any effort into defining a workplace culture, I would say that you're probably going to come up with things like, or phrases or terms like, management is out of control, they don't have any control, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, I've got no one that, I don't know what the communication strategies are to make complaints, I don't know what I'm supposed to do if I get into trouble with something, etc., etc. Now, if that's the situation that you find yourself in, knowing this is going to be really important for you. And the reason it's going to be really important for you is because you can't fix it until you know that it exists. So it's hard to hear. It's really, really hard to hear this stuff. And it was for my clients. But once I could show them how empowering it was to move forward now that they had the information, it was very exciting because now we can fix it. Now we can start looking at filling the gaps of what's going on. Now, if as an employee, you want to understand what your workplace culture is, again, ask at interview, ask employees that work there before you take on board a job, because asking the questions about what the workplace culture is going to give you an extraordinary amount of information about what you can expect when you do start working there. And don't simply ask questions like, hey, what's the workplace culture like? Workplace culture involves things like the way that people talk to each other. It involves, what is the approach to education? It involves how do we talk to leadership? It involves, well, what's the buying philosophy and how is the branding communicated to the staff? What you're trying to establish through understanding what the workplace culture is essentially how do people communicate with each other? How do people pass on information? How do people take care of each other? Maybe they don't. Maybe you exist in a workplace culture that's toxic and there is zero care given about whether you are happy at work or not. Now, at the end of the day, if you just want a job, I'd probably suspect that you're not one of those people if you're listening to this podcast. But let's say you have employees or co-workers who just want a job. That's why they're there. They want to turn up, they want to collect their pay, and they want to go home. Okay, those are people who perhaps are not too interested in getting involved in the workplace culture. But if you're somebody who's looking at establishing a career, a long-term career, and you want to know about what's going on, understanding that there is no care given to employees, happiness or safety or anything like that, and that won't be a place that you want to work. Similarly, as an employer, if you just want to have employees who are workhorses, I'm trying to find a different word for that. I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but I don't know what it's not meant to be a derogatory term is what I'm saying, but I hope you guys understand what I mean by workhorses. I'm not calling you an animal or anything like that. I'm just saying people who are super focused on, getting the work done and getting it out there. But if you're looking to hire people who are just workhorses, I get it. I understand that there are people that want to hire people like that. It doesn't mean that you can't create an amazing culture for those people to exist in. You've just got to figure out what the tone is of what you're trying to create. Now, tomorrow on the podcast, we're going to cover how you will change the workplace culture after you've understood what your workplace culture is, which is what we covered today. If you have any questions from hearing this till the next podcast, send them through. You can head to our not our podcast, our website, mapitforward.org, and click the button that says Ask the Daily Coffee Pro, and just let us know that you want us to answer this question regarding culture in the workplace, and we will make sure that it's attached to the information that we give tomorrow. So I hope that's been helpful. Again, if you have any questions, send them through. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.